Guys, a staggering statistic that is just mind-boggling. Analysts and psychotherapists, psychiatrists, neuroscientists all agree that by 2020, the leading cause of disability is going to be depression. Depression is going to be, in just a few years, the leading cause of disability in every country around the globe. One has to ask themselves the question, what's going on here? What's going on here? What's behind all of this? So guys, let's talk about what we're up against here in 2016, because it's true that our nervous systems and our emotions are constantly under attack by our environment. I'm talking about the pollutants and toxins in the air. Definitely attacks the nervous system. I'm talking about the food that we eat, genetically modified products and heavily processed products. This definitely, whether you know it or not, plays a huge factor on your nervous system and on your emotions. The overabundance of RF frequency and electromagnetic waves in the atmosphere, in the environment, in our own homes, for God's sakes. The tremendous amount of information through, the internet and social media that we're constantly bombarded with. Information that it's just impossible for us to process, right? To compute. And eventually it overwhelms us. And so all of these factors contribute. Now, most of these factors are pretty much out of our control to one degree or another. So let's talk about what is in our control. Because that's always the question, what is in our control? And then once we know what's in our control, we can map a plan to try to overcome the hurdles and obstacles that are sit in front of us, right? And so this leads me to self-compassion. Now, when I was in the hospital a few years ago, and I was going through a rough patch, I was introduced, it was a real eye-opener, and it opened my eyes to anxiety and depression. Now, my rough patch was born out of circumstance, but I was introduced to many great people who were dealing with this every day for many years, and maybe even for the rest of their lives. And I looked at them very carefully, and I said, so what's the common denominator here? Is there a common theme with these people? And there was a common theme, and you know what the common theme was? They were all extremely self-critical. Extremely self-critical to a level that wasn't reasonable or rational. So they were constantly beating themselves up and tormenting themselves over their imperfections and their mistakes and the things that they felt they could have done better. And by being self-critical, basically they were turning themselves into the attacker and the attacked all at once. And chemically, let's talk about this. What happens when you are constantly criticizing yourself, whether it be consciously or subconsciously? And by the way, consciously turns into subconsciously. So the problem is, these self-criticisms they play out 24/7 unless you stop it. But what happens chemically when you are constantly criticizing yourself is you activate the adrenal cortex, right? That part in your brain, it's known as the amygdala, right? Response, the fight or flight. You activate that reptilian part of your brain that produces and propagates cortisol at a staggering rate. So your cortisol level, the stress hormone, skyrockets, and this has a major depleting effect on you physiologically and always leads to depression. Always leads to depression. So what's the exact, how can you fight this? How can you battle this? What's the exact antithesis of self-criticism? Self-compassion. Now, by self-compassion, we are saying treat yourself the way you would treat a good friend. It's that simple, guys. Treat yourself with kindness, with patience, with nurturing, right? With acceptance and understanding, with respect, with forgiveness, for God's sakes. Forgiving yourself for being human and for making mistakes. By being self-compassionate. You, now getting back to the chemicals, you are releasing oxytocin and natural opiates, reducing your cortisol level to a very reasonable level, and allowing yourself to be in a constructive, positive, joyful frame of mind to deal with all of the obstacles and hurdles that are going to be in front of you in a very complex world. So I just wanted to say, self-compassion, understand what it means, be a good friend to yourself. Be a good friend to yourself.